This week on RSBANDB Update, we delve into the latest chapter of Once Upon a Time, Fortunes. Relomia's character begins to take shape, and we question where she might show up in the future. Also, just what is up with Emerald Bolts? We explain why you should give them another look. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 837, recorded Thursday, July 8th, 2021. The Emerald Dark Horse. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of RSBANDB Update. Tanis and I are back off the heels of another monthly bit, this time talking about RuneScape Mobile. Welcome back, Tanis.
Thank you, Shane. That was a good bit.
It really was. It felt like we were doing one of those, 60 Minutes or Dateline NBC specials.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun. I love those bits when it just feels like everything is just firing, and really get down and uncover some.
Yeah, it's like. To us, it's like painting a picture, but we're going on. We'll talk more about that at the Patreon spot. Of course, the main reason I want everybody to listen this week is because of our guest, Thaxi from Clan Quest. Welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks. It's nice to be on.
Give everyone a little bit of a brief rundown about what you do on RS. If you have any major claim to fame you want to highlight or anything to that effect.
I've been... started playing in about 2003. Been in Clan Quest for just over a decade now. I earned max comp, trimmed, MQC. 3 pets away from the Master of All title. Outside of games, struggling medical student with degrees in dance and biochemistry. Definitely, I'm along today probably mostly because I am a ranged combat addict.
Oh, interesting.
I've done about PVMer probably, I would call myself, for about the last 5 years. 100 kill count at most bosses, really big love for Raxreg, and I'm ranked for the Mascab raids in the raid FC. Experienced, but definitely not a speed killer, definitely not a DPS expert.
And it explains a lot why you're here in that case. One thing I guess I could say is, has the dance background ever come into play on RS?
I noticed a few things that they put in character animations, but movement is one of those things that is expensive. Code into RuneScape, so they not incredibly often. Okay. It's always fun to see when they throw it in.
All right, fair enough. But
music. The music. Actually, I'll take that back. The RuneScape music. I have choreographed so many things to random RuneScape music tracks.
Oh wow!
So, Mod Ian, you're the goat.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we love the RuneScape music. City of Sintistan was wonderful. Archaeology was wonderful. So much good stuff in the modern era, but we could go on, and I feel like that's the whole topic of RS3. But nonetheless, we do have you here because of some wonderful analysis you did on a patch note this week, of all things. Based on the ranged aspect, I think people will probably guess which one that is when we get there. But before we do that, we have a mini quest to discuss, and if you guys want to follow along, you can find full show notes at update.rsbnb.com, and you can also join our Discord by visiting rsbnb.com/discord. And this is the third or fourth? I think it's definitely third of the Once Upon a Time mini quest that Jagex has been putting out since January of this year, celebrating 20 years of RuneScape. And this mini quest is called Fortunes. He started by talking with Closure in his office. And did you guys think that we might be headed off on a different path here than we were first led to believe when Xanax or Tiffy and Ariane appeared in the office? Or I guess Thaxi, I'm just asking you.
It definitely started off, and it looked like it could be going any number of ways, I will say. I did not expect where it ended up.
No.
It should have.
The dialogue with Xanax, this is many times I've been here talking about the many times, of course, that Xanax has been killed and brought back to life. Poor character going back many, many years. And, you know, I think everybody has a hankering for some Temple Knights with Sir Tiffy in terms of, you know, getting more of those quests, which was a very contentious topic on City of Sintistan release week with what they did around that. And, of course, Ariane, who has been one of our main protagonists in the recent quests, including Azanad's quest in City of Sintistan itself. So, effectively, the whole point about this portion of Once Upon a Time is that you need to effectively review some key aspects from Missing Presumed Death, Dishonor Among Thieves, and Death of Chivalry. Of course, the reason that Sir Tiffy was there, Death of Chivalry. That was such a wonderful quest going back, I think. And it's worth noting you don't have to have completed these quests. You just have to effectively know some of the lore around them. And, you know, you do pick up a little bit extra around the edges on this front. Was there anything in the first discussion here in Closure's office with Zanuck, Tiffy, or Ariane that stood out to you?
You know, I'll highlight the same thing you did. I had a big, hefty chuckle at they're always a little self-aware. And Zanuck, she's dead again. And good shout out to how many times have we done this at this point?
Yeah.
No, several. And I was actually interested to see Sir Tiffy there. And I wondered what the development timeline was for this with regards to they started thinking about doing this at the start of the year. Did they have planned the Temple Knights to kind of change sides already? Tiffy, because he's right middle of that power structure for them, and we don't,
Yeah, we don't know what that would have been.
Right for sure.
We don't know what that would have been because, based on the timeline, I think it's fairly safe to say that when the first part of Once Upon a Time came out, Azanad's Quest was in probably the final stretches of being developed. But definitely on the Temple Knights stuff. And I think I might be remembering this wrong, but somebody can correct me if I'm not, either here or listening after the fact. I think they said that this is supposed to be independent of everything that's happening in Elder God Wars.
For sure.
So, I mean, as much as it would be nice to feel a crossover, I don't think they're going to do that. But I couldn't help but feel that, okay, doesn't it feel like we're kind of teeing this up in Fortunes here to kind of wind up in a place at the end of the Elder God Wars line that would effectively allow the character to die, your character to die? Did you get that sense at all from this one this week?
No, that's a great question. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, visiting Closure's office so much and saying, hey, let's write our story while you're still alive so we can make sure that we get everything in. So I'll give you a solid maybe there. The biggest thing, right, is that we're seeing what happens and kind of people after they die.
Yeah.
So if we're assuming that something happens and there are shadow anima things involved in this Elder God Wars dungeon, right, that we're pulling stuff out of the void, out of Erebus.
Yeah.
That stuff should be. We're not immune to god powers associated with that, so maybe Zaros can impact. We are definitely susceptible. With that said, I think we've still got that fate-touched aspect that we always had, even before World Guardian status, that said, hey, if you die, that'll do you solid. But who knows?
Yeah, and this all factors into what was some of the stuff we discussed on the first part of this, with Relomia being ultimately fleshed out as a character. Because, the one thing that I didn't think of when I was doing this, but, we need to remember throughout this entire thing that she was Slisuke's emissary. And we know where he is now.
We definitely know where he is now.
Yeah. So, and I'm starting to think that there might be some kind of convergence there that would ultimately bring us closer to Relomia, which would kind of be like allowing her to get closer to Sliske again, if that makes sense. I don't know. Perhaps we're reading too much into this, and this is just a fun way of reminiscing over the last 20 years.
I think it's interesting because, like you say, I think this is separated from the 5th Age, 6th Age thing. It's just part of the lore. Obviously, I guess it is 6th Age because Sliske has been back, and that's Relomia's history. But the Sliske bits it really do seem a little out of place when they pop up, right? Those masks, they're the peanut gallery.
Yep.
They're the commentary that we can hear but nobody else can, and they don't seem to add to me a bunch to these quests. There must be some purpose for them to be there, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But potentially just for the comedic value even.
And, even if it's done in an external fashion or if it's just something that's kind of done on the side, I think it definitely makes sense to kind of tie those things together because everybody has that question of what happened to Sliske after Sliske's endgame. And we'll probably find out in the Elder God Wars series.
You think so? I think we're definitely going to find out at some point through quest or something. But I don't know if it's going to be related to, Elder God Wars. Maybe it is guaranteed at this point because they've been throwing it into those quests. But it seems so unrelated.
Yeah.
But, because he's still he's not technically well, he kind of ascended. It's very borderline back and forth, right?
Yeah. And it feels like, part of his essence is within you too. So
for sure. Anyways, we're getting
off track here, but the point is that you could definitely have that discussion in Once Upon a Time, I think, because that chronicles, at the time, Endgame was one of the biggest feats of the World Guardian. And I think you'd be remiss if you didn't look at that in one of the Once Upon a Time chapters. Because, like I said, on this one, you looked after events that happened in Missing Presumed Death, Dishonor Among Thieves, and the Death of Chivalry. But, getting back to the quest, the whole point of this is that you have to set up a quest for Relomia to allow Closure to write the story of Relomia. And in order to do that, you set up some scarecrows in the field west of the portal to go into Death's office, and then you have to go find Relomia at a number of the pubs that she might be at in order to get her to go on the quest. You check the Blue Moon Inn, the Jolly Boar Inn, and what was the last one's name? The Dancing Donkey.
Here we go.
That's one of the other obscure ones in Varrock. And then you do the quest, or have Relomia do the quest. You follow along with her. And the boss that Relomia actually has to fight inside the quest is you. Now, I found this bit rather confusing. Did you have any runes on you when you did this?
No, I didn't, and I was on Lunars.
Okay, same thing here. So you effectively get this staff, and you're told to use magic abilities, but you get the message that you can't autocast anything.
What I've seen, too, because it seems like we both had the same experience, people that had... I think you weren't allowed to bring a whole lot of stuff with you.
No, you could not have anything.
I don't know if you could have brought runes. And apparently the wand broke. And I didn't notice this happen when I was doing it, so maybe it didn't. But I think if you're doing too well, the wand breaks on you and you are effectively left punching her regardless.
Yeah. And it just feels like it just felt weird the way the combat was done, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's definitely one of those things that's like scary for your hardcore Iron Men if they're not, if they don't know that it's safe. For sure.
Yeah. Though I think they did say in the quest that it was going to be a safe death.
They did.
Yeah. But
as we know, people don't always read those. So
yeah, that's true. Some people just spacebar through quests to get to the rewards.
Speaking of which, that wand is a wand of quest spacebarring, as we found out after this boss battle.
Oh, yeah.
Kept being stopped in her tracks. So shout out to Relomia for being... That's how you know that the lore team wants to make somebody questionable persons, if they make them a wand of spacebarring.
Oh, yeah. and see, this is... Go ahead.
No, finish your point, because I got another question for you.
This is, I think one of the very key golden principles of RuneScape questing. It's that you have to be able to make fun of yourself as a game, and they just did that so well.
Absolutely. Here's my question for you, and Tannis, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this as well. It's historically, in this quest, we suddenly realized that, oh wait, the player's the bad guy. We're being set up to be the bad guy, and we're the good guy because we're the bad guy. My question is, when you look back historically, especially at the older quests, the player to me is very, very much on the morally gray into chaotic side of things. I don't know if I would say evil, but definitely not good.
Yeah, I would lean to the gray area as well.
Very much in terms of very easily manipulated by everybody, right? You're talking the Mourners, we're talking the Devourer, and doing, honestly, some things that are just questionable. We're killing all kinds of stuff. We're halfway between Murder Hobo and...
all the torture sequences, too.
Yeah, so I'm just going to throw it is the player a good person? We're definitely doing good things. Maybe not. In the canon lore that you can't make a decision on. So that really came to mind for me with this boss fight of oh wait, I have to be the evil guy, the big bad evil guy, the BBEG. Is that really that far off base?
No.
For writing our story?
No, I don't know.
Maybe not.
Tannis, what do you think?
Not.
I mean, we've been the unwitting just dolt so many times. But then at the same time, how many times are we in these storylines where we're saving the world and we're doing this? I mean, we're smack dab in the middle of one now. And I think one of the things that's been reflected just with the sixth stage itself and bringing more kind of context around the gods as we start to see them as not these two-dimensional kind of characters either, that they have some gray around the edges as well. Take Sir Delman, for example. So it's almost like we're kind of mirroring that in a way. Yeah, that's kind of.
I think Saren as well. Sarah Delman, they spent they had the battle of the Battle of Lumbridge, and Sarah Delman was people were yes, he's the good guy. We're coming right off of RuneScape 2. Yep. That's the big thing. And stick with the side of good because that's generally who the RuneScape player, on average, maybe leans towards. And afterwards, we were he's very controlling and manipulative, and really went downhill fast, and especially in the last couple of years, and over the last half decade, probably they've really been trying to build Sarah Delman back up.
Yeah, and look how much we learned about Zamorak.
Mm-hmm.
The players completely misunderstood everything he stood for.
So. Very much trying to make the gods all kind of fit in that gray area. It too, and trying to find a balance where it's okay, you love these people a little too much. They seem a little too good. Saren's got the Dark Lord in her. Don't forget that she's got this she's also wildly controlling as much as she might be.
Yeah, we had big questions about her with City of Sintistan. So
again, long-time Saren person. I will follow with the elves on that one, but she's been done dirty recently.
Yeah, and
for sure.
I think what you have just uncovered here is you've uncovered perhaps one of the best ways to look at the RuneScape storyline. And I've never looked at it that way, and I appreciate that. So that's very good. It's very good.
There we go. That's my thoughts from that boss battle.
That's perfect.
Long answer to your question.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Following from that, of course, the wand breaks. Relomia defeats you. We talk to closure, and that's quest complete. With this one, you get at the end of it a medium lamp. Before we move on, any thoughts about where we're headed after this is all said and done?
The end goal of these 20 years is?
Yeah, the end goal of the Once Upon a Time.
I hope we really get some collaboration. I hope something goes terribly wrong, and maybe this is too big of a scope for this style of quest. Something goes terribly wrong, and you get to team up with Relomia to actually fix it. And she gets the kind of renown. Like, I would love to end up with the end of this being some kind of cheer for her. Listen, I like her character.
Yeah, and
they're building her up as like somebody who's been really kicked down. She's there,
right? Because you remember her arc started so low, and if it was to wind up at the end and effectively end up redeeming herself, that would be a big thing throughout this. And I think that's something actually Diana suggested in the first chapter of this thing, going back.
How long ago was the last installment of this?
I want to say April?
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is something that should have had a previously on Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, last one was April. Before that was January.
Yeah, that's too much space without having some kind of a quick little cutscene story recap.
Remember last one? Last one had Draz in it.
I like that they had us go back, like the quest. If you don't look at the guide or anything, it has you go back to the Blue Moon and then the Jolly Boar, and you talk to the bartenders, and you kind of hear like, oh yeah, she had a party here at the the inn, and then we go over here, and she had this. What was the second one? They explain to you again the things that you did and that she did to you when you picked her up at those places. So they've got a little bit of that in there. But yeah, you're right. They definitely kind of throw you into closed office and say, hey, to fix something about her. Oh, okay.
And I think the thing that people missed from this one compared to the last one was that the last one had those cutscenes where you could actually go into the alternate universe of that quest. In flashback.
Yeah, which they could have done for this, but I guess honestly the voice lines talking people seem to do enough of a job to get the message across that we're not the ones to help you, but also here's some funny dialogue.
Because, I mean, the threads it pulled on from those other quests were just a few dialogue lines from those few characters, and I think in terms of the people that I talked to who felt this one was lacking was because you didn't, in effect, go back and experience any of those quests, and you just did it through dialogue. I think that's the big thing that people were pulling out on this one.
Personally, I will say that I think they did justice to having the funny RuneScape dialogue that I like out of a quest. They hit some narrative development points. I think they made it too so that if you were a person who wanted to spacebar through quests and to use a guide, you could do it real quick. Like I think they hit both sides of the population: the people that want to read dialogue and hear the RuneScape humor, and the people that want to just have it done with.
Yeah,
they appeased both sides well with that.
And Mod Jack is on the record of saying this, is that it's okay to have a quest that encourages spacebarring. I don't know those are his exact words, but he has effectively said that we can have quests that encourage people to just play through it quickly for people who aren't usual questers.
There's not a barrier to them, having the content.
Yeah. And you also see that with the graphical cutscenes as well and whatnot. So
on the whole for this one, I'm trying to think of characters that have been in the game. The thing that they've done with these, in honestly 3 fairly short quests, is that they've given Relomia the character a ton of character development. They've built her out a backstory and had some really development in who she is and how she thinks about things and her outlook.
I know.
And honestly, I don't know if we've had a whole lot of characters like Cyrissus, potentially, from Dream Mentor and Lunar Diplomacy, but we've not had a whole lot of characters that we've kind of these are RuneScape characters, and now we know a bunch about them, and they've changed a lot.
I think I know what they're doing here with her.
Yeah.
On the live stream this week, Maud Osborne said there's still a lot of characters they need to bring in to the Elder God Wars arc. And you couldn't just bring Relomia in without building a backstory for her.
And boy, does she have, you think about the other God emissaries, they exist. You can maybe name yours. I couldn't name the Zarin one.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody knows Relomia. They know what she's about. They know what she's likely to do. And what she's likely to do has changed since the start of the year. Like, they are building her into a specific character.
And they're going to use her at some point in the Elder God Wars arc. That's what this is all about.
They've done that. I'm sure that I'm missing people, and our clanmates and people that listen to this can be like, yo, this guy, you're forgetting this guy. But, like...
Right. But who is a better foil?
Than 99% of the other NPCs.
But who is a better foil to the World Guardian than Sliske? When Sliske is not there, you fall back to his emissary.
And she, like, again, the Sliske masks and her, they bring in a nice, like, there's some humor element there without going off of the, like, there's some story element here. It's hidden in the humor. But also, like, you know, this is just a big story that's going on right now. It's stressful, but here's some Sliske. Have that going for you.
I think
Not to say that Sliske a joke, but, like, that's his role.
I think we just figured this out.
Maybe.
Crack the code.
Time will tell. Anyways.
That would be really interesting if that happens. And on that, I think I'm ready for the patch notes if you guys are.
Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. That was monthly bit level there, Tanis, wasn't it?
It was.
All right, so moving on to the patch notes this week, a number of changes have been made to the spells for City of Sintistan that came out, so much so that Smoke Cloud has been added to Borrowed Power, but they have also nerfed Smoke Cloud because it was overperforming for non-magic users. The debuff now has 40% effectiveness for non-magic style damage. For ranged and melee, critical hit cap has been reduced from 112 to 104.8, and the critical strike damage has been reduced from 15% to 6%. Plus, trimmed Masterworks bleed set effect will no longer be reduced by the animate dead spell. Yeah, that was a pretty big one on that front.
I'll flex my ranger muscles here for a hot second.
Do it.
The Masterwork armor set. That probably makes this not viable for melee. That probably says you could use it, it's a little extra damage, but it's not going to help you.
I completely agree with that.
Ranged people live on lunars, or at least I do, right? I'll spellbook swap if I really need something else. I'll carry like 4 rune pouches if I have to. But for the most part, Borrowed Power, you can set one spell to it to have so that you're not carrying 4 rune pouches, you just need to carry 1 or 2. And that the alternative right now for Rangers for most people is Vuln, right? So
yep.
You could have Smoke Cloud in there, and you could use Vuln Bombs, or you could have Vuln in your Borrowed Power, and save that extra inventory slot. So there is some option there if you really want to maximize, but if you're short on inventory space because of switches or whatever else, Rangers probably not using this anymore, or not as readily. They'll use the Vuln from a pouch that you can use while you have your shields or other things, or Venge's in. Is going to be better for you. So,
yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a choice. It might not be the smart choice to make, but it's not going to, elevate ranged and melee as much as it would before. Not that they need elevation compared to magic. So, I think that change needed to be done. There's also a hotfix last week that was preventing players from picking up the Blood Ward after killing the Blood Warden in the city of Sintistan. For the mobile client this week, improve the wiki button on the chat message panel to help stop users from accidentally sending their wiki search to a chat channel. And, we could talk about how chat works on mobile for any length of time, but that topic is neither here nor there for this week. I know we've had big discussions about that, but they have also added the online status filter, moved chat badge options into chat customization, which is accessed via gameplay settings, prevented the action bar swap feature from interfering with the user's Revolution setup on the mobile client. That doesn't sound good if you were trying to do PVM. And increased the text size on 2D cutscenes. It will now also scale with screen size.
That's good.
Furthermore, players can now reliably report offensive chat on mobile. And the MVP of the week, for me, I know we're going to have another big MVP after, but for me, fixed an issue that caused some mobile users to log in with a blank ribbon. Because this was also persisting over to desktop, and there's a separate patch note for that one later. So we had a week of no custom ribbon on the desktop. Tanis, were you bit by this?
Yes, actually, come to think of it, my ribbon was blank. Not on mobile, though. It was on the desktop.
Okay. So that's the one later on in the patch notes. And you know what? If you tried to reset it to however you had it, it would wipe it again on even just going to lobby.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. They also fixed an issue with chat boxes on mobile that could cause players to be kicked from games. For the legendary pet overrides from last week, entering a player-owned house with a legendary pet will no longer revert any visual overrides, and you can no longer override legendary pets with other legendary pets. Kind of a bit of a jack-in-a-box scenario right there. The Mayor of Davendale's voiceover now matches the text displayed when approaching the gates. The text displayed during the smithing tutorial on the Berthorpe Path is now clearer about what to do next. I believe that should say more clear. Dark Mage hats, added black and blue Dark Mage hats and matching hoods. And I was wondering what this is about, but this turns out that these are actually items from the Yak track previous to this one. There was a Dark Mage set.
Cosmetics.
But they didn't have the hats and hoods associated with them. They only had the robes. So now they got the full set from that Yak track.
Looked real derpy, and they look much better. So shout out to Jagex for making a good, easy fix.
Yeah. Yak track cosmetics are always wonderful. I never know which one to use, if any.
Polarizing.
For engine changes now, this of course affects the various performance aspects. These were added into the game on the 30th of June. Improved the graphics performance on mobile phones and reduced the minimum supported iOS version to iOS 13. It was previously iOS 14. So I think this takes them down to supporting the iPhone 6S if I know my iPhone models properly right now. So at the very least, it's the iPhone 7.
Sounds like science.
But probably the 6S as well. Reduced client freezes and stuttering in busy areas. Water reflections no longer render at low quality on mobile. And adjusted tap offset handling for iOS devices. I feel like we talked about this last week, but it's in the patch notes again this week. These were on the 30th. Why did I put these in? Anyways, you guys enjoy hearing these again. You're also now able to toggle depth of field even when draw distances are below high. But the dark horse of the patch notes is now here.
Let's finish the list because I'm going to spend probably 3 or 4 minutes on these. So let's finish the other parts of the other section first.
Okay. Yeah, good idea. Good idea. Fix the date of birth required interface so it now presents properly and will no longer prevent players from logging out. Slayer Masters can assign Banshee tasks to players wearing the Mask of Mourning. Various locations now remember the chosen skybox overrides and will revert to it when leaving the area. This is probably a good one for you, Tanis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really great for a Raxor because a Raxor, if you're in an instance, you cannot use a custom skybox while the boss is present. So it reverts it when you leave, which is very nice.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't used to do that.
That might help you get a kill, Tanis.
Too,
yeah.
Doesn't have...
Because remember, you had trouble seeing the light when we did that little experiment a couple months ago.
You still can't use custom skyboxes in a Raxor. It just fixes it when the kill is over and you go back to where you're resupplying.
All right.
Unfortunate.
Rings and amulets will no longer be mistaken for combat auras when attempting to travel to Entrina. It's no longer possible to smuggle the Master Slayer Capes effect across multiple Slayer tasks.
Oops. Just put it around for a minute. Did not know that was a problem.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious that's like that.
Smuggle. Lovely.
Fixed an issue where the custom ribbon layout was being removed after World Hopper relogin, which resulted in the custom ribbon appearing blank. So this is us combined with that previous one, Dennis.
Oh, okay.
There we go. And the Dwarven Harvester will now only consume 1 charge when used with a Patch Bomb or the Farming Skill Cape perk. So there we have it. The patch notes of the week, minus the Dark Horse, which...
Let's talk.
Yes. Let me read it out first, and I'll tell you what I think is happening, and you can tell me why this is a big, big deal. So, the magical poison effect of Emerald Bolts has been adjusted so that it no longer poisons the target, but it will now apply a single poison hit on activation, which deals 2 to 4% weapon damage. The damage also now scales with poison modifiers, and the event will activate as expected. Now, when I read this, I thought this was just, would just result in the same amount of damage being done, and they just, moved it from a damage over time or dot to a single hit to save on processing costs on the back end. Because anytime you're tracking dots, multiple of them, that's a performance hit. So if you can do it as a single one, why not? But there's obviously more to it. And
so
you dove into this week.
Really did. And in order to kind of understand what's going on here, you need a ton of background on how the criminal bolts work, and where you should be using them. So let's start with that real quick. Firstly, specifically related to this patch note change. The last year and a half, Emerald criminal bolts have not had an effect. They've had a tooltip, and they will activate and be consumed, but they will not actually apply any additional poison damage to a target. They've been non-functional since middle of 2019. So that's what the last note of this patch note is, that the effect will now activate as expected. It just wasn't before. And it used to be that it would just apply a bleed that would a thing that would happen every 12 seconds. You'd get an additional poison hit, but it wouldn't reapply itself. So if it was already running, it would just consume the bolt. So really, they were not good. And they now, and we'll get into what the actual activation thing and how it scales with poison modifiers, because I did some testing on these earlier today. And it's interesting how I think they've coded these from what I've seen. But let's talk about the criminal bolt for a second and why these are different and what makes them special. The Onyx and Hydrix criminal bolts have, when you include your modifiers, a 14.4% to activate when you hit something.
So that you're saying that's a 14.4% chance with modifiers to activate the effect.
Yeah, so the Elite Diary from the Seer's Village and the Range Skill Cape perk active will make that a 14.4%, up from, I think. The standard bolts have a base 5, and when you include your multipliers, it's 8.4% to activate. So all of the other bolts, except for Emerald. Emerald has a base chance of 55%, which is 11 times higher than the other bolts. When you include your modifiers, it gets up to 68.4%. So we can round to 0.7, or 70% chance-ish to activate, a little over a third, whatever you want, 2/3, whatever you want to call it. But they're only consumed 1/8 as often. So you go through about 10% more bolts when you use Emerald bolts.
Right.
But otherwise, they just proc a lot more often. And which kind of is an explanation of how things work. Let's talk about which bolts you're using where, right? Because that's the real question. This is: are these useful someplace?
Yeah, and just to lay the groundwork for everybody who is listening to this, you might not PVM, so you're wondering what the hell are these back criminal bolts? They're effectively some of the highest and most expensive forms of ranged ammunition that you could use. For example, I used Onyx bolts when I got my first Araxor kill. I probably didn't need to do that, but I just wanted the extra little safety effect. Continue.
So let's talk through kind of bolts that you should be using, right? the best bolts in the game, unquestionably, no question at all, is Hydrix bolts. Now, they're in order to use them, right, you need to have completely best in slot range gear, more or less. It needs to be taught like your Eldritch crossbows and your Siren Godbows and your Dark Bow and an Essence of like you, the whole 9 yards. You need to be able to use a ton of adrenaline really quickly.
Right.
To be useful. Also, they cost 600,000 gold a minute to use. So they're really expensive and definitely not worth using most places, right? You use half as many bolts if you're wearing gold Blightbound crossbows. So that does play into big effect there. The thing that you should note with those is that, like, effectively you use them only for speed kills, and maybe if you're the Soul Chinner in Champa roll in the Angel of Death fight, or maybe for like Telos if you're doing Telos on range. That's kind of it, right? They're not, shouldn't really be used in most places unless you've got way too much money.
Yeah, and to examine text and what they actually do, they apply Death Mark, which is a 10% chance to instantly provide 10% adrenaline, and add an additional 1% adrenaline from basic abilities for 15 seconds.
You just get to fire off a ton more high damage abilities. That's what they do. Just say, yeah, you get to suddenly do more damage with your abilities on average. It's great. And it's definitely different, so you need to practice with them. They're a unique situation. And generally speaking, we're just going to ignore that they just don't exist because they're too expensive to use for most people. But below this, right, next, so that's a ton of extra damage. We're going to pretend they don't exist for now. Next, let's talk about Ruby Bolts really quick, because that's the go-to for, I feel like, most people when it comes to bossing.
Yeah.
Ruby Bolts have a ton of funky mechanics. Their effect, when it activates, they do 20% of the target's health, maximum health damage, and 10% of your current health damage to you, which is great. Their damage does scale down. So if the monster is below half health, the damage scales down from that. So if their hit cap does. They'll only do 80% as much damage if the monster's at 40% health. They'll only do 60% as much damage if the monster's at 30% health. The way that comes out, if you're using tier 85 or higher or tier 90 damage, is that they are no longer worth using. They are actually a damage decrease if the monster is below 40,000 health.
So what you're saying,
the monster doesn't have enough hit points.
So what you're saying is, if you have Ascension crossbows, when you're fighting for something less than 40,000, you are taking a DPS hit by using Ruby Back Criminals.
Absolutely, and you're taking damage. The other thing about them is that their debuff is applied to the target, not from you. So if there's 5 people attacking the same target with these bolts, and they have a cooldown of 6 seconds per activation, only one person is getting the benefit of those bolts, maybe 2. So realistically, the criteria for using Ruby Back Criminal Bolts, they are going to be the best in slot after Hydrix in every scenario where a monster with between 200,000 and 3 million health, going to be best in, and where the monster has more than 40% health remaining, and where there's not more than one other person who's using them on that monster with you. So again, that's a lot of things. It's a lot of bossing. They're still going to be your go-to for a lot of stuff, right? So those exist too. If a monster is below 40% health, your question is, what should I be using? What's the next best damage bolt that's not your Hydrix? And that's definitely Onyx, right? Onyx, just because they have that higher, twice as high a chance to activate, basically, than the other criminal bolts. They do 25% additional damage when they activate, and they heal you for the amount that they increase the damage. They heal you for 25% of that damage that you dealt.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like we...
On average,
and it's not like we have a shortage of Onyx coming into game. Still expensive to use, but not as expensive as Hydrix.
And the bolt tips have dropped by a bunch.
Yeah.
So, they're, 12k each. So what it comes out to is that if you compare them to using sailfish or like blue blubber jellyfish, they're about 2 or 3 times as expensive for the hit points you get back. They don't cost any adrenaline to use, and they're just part of your rotation, and they do, once again, they're the best damage option if you're outside of the Ruby category and you don't want to spend it for Hydrix. So, or that's, at least before this patch, they were. And what it comes down to when you do the math is that 25% or that 15% chance to activate, it's just over 3% additional damage, and you heal for that 3% of the damage you deal. Which is about the same as the Vampirism Aura, because the Vampirism Aura caps, and you hit it above 2,000, you don't get additional healing or so, right? So it's about the same as the Vampirism Aura, and obviously you get to use a different aura with it. So if you got a little extra money you want to really push to get a new boss done, Onyx Bolts are a great choice. If you're in the last 40% of a health for a tough boss, if you're doing Gregorovic or something, you need some extra sustain, great choice. That's where Onyxes kind of fit. But once again, they're really expensive to use. That healing comes at a price. You're spending 12k and you're getting about 1,000 healing. Versus the Sailfish, you spend 8k, you get about 1,000 healing. Lower.
Are we going to talk about Diamond or Dragonstone?
That's what's next, right? So if you're at a place where you're doing Slayer, right, and you don't want to spend money for the Onyxes, but the Rubies really, the monster doesn't have enough health for that, or God Wars Dungeon 1, places like that, you're looking now, what's the best of the remaining bolts? Diamond bolts were the best when we didn't have 100% accuracy, because they do have that 100% accuracy and 10% additional damage effect. What it's come down to now is that basically, if you're kind of endgame-ish, you've got like tier 80 or higher weapons, you probably have close to 90 or higher accuracy on most things.
Right, and especially if you're doing Slayer, then you're going to be pushing that even further.
Absolutely. I mean, depending on your Slayer monster. Some of them actually have higher armor than some bosses. But yeah, your Diamond bolts, Diamonds are a little more expensive than other gems. Dragonstones too, for that matter. But realistically, we're still under that 5k and under price if you're making your own bolts, which is fine. And they, again, activate half as often as the Onyx, so you're really talking a quarter of the cost to use these. But again, you're getting 10% extra damage when they activate versus the Dragonstone bolts, which don't work on dragons, so first of all. But their effect is 25% additional damage applied as a second hit, which is going to be important. And that additional damage applied as a second hit counts as Dragonfire damage. So again, they don't work on dragons, but it's a little bit of extra damage, and it comes out to just over 2% damage increase on average from those bolts. Obviously, no healing,
sure,
but cheaper to use. And before this, that would be my go-to for if I wanted to spend a little extra money. They come out to a bit under 30k a minute to use, under 15k if you have your dual blight bounce. Again, expensive, but that makes them about half the cost of an Elder Overload per minute to use. So maybe worth it for like your Slayer potentially. Something to think about where they're applicable. Now, that's kind of what we're working with as a baseline, is that we're going to be comparing the Emerald bolts to Dragonstone, because Dragonstone are going to be the same kind of price range, same effective use case, right?
I see where we're going with this.
So the comparison is, do these new bolts potentially increase my damage more than 2%? Again, worth noting, they're poison damage, so if a monster is poison immune, which a couple Slayer creatures are, and a lot of the earlier bosses, all of God Wars Dungeon 1, anything that starts with an R, Urago, Rax, Rots, Maxi, all those are immune to poison. Most of the other bosses, most of God Wars Dungeon 2, with the exception of the Furies and Vindicta, are both poison immune, but the other two you can use them for. Right, that would be a lot of my go-to is like Greg, great point. Same thing with Hellward. So the question is, what do these work with, and what do they like? Why could they be good? So again, we've got a 70% chance to activate them, which great to start off with, and we're applying 2 to 4% weapon damage each time. A really great range rotation right now, if you're doing it on a combat gem and you're not using the typical rules for doing damage per minute gem, right, is you don't use a scrimshot, an aura, a familiar, you don't use the criminal bolts, so you don't use vulnerability, you don't use poison or cinder veins, right, kind of depending on what you're doing the gem for. A good thing is about 6,500% weapon damage per minute. If you're getting a good range rotation, with greater ricochet, you're looking about 80 to 90 hit splats a minute with your standard range setup. But without greater ricochet, you're looking closer to like 60, maybe 70 hit splats onto a creature in a minute.
So 60 to 70 versus 80-ish, you say?
Yeah, it's a big boost for sure.
Okay.
But these bolts will apply every time you hit the creature, right? Potentially 70% of the time they will. When you're getting this off every minute, probably getting off on average, say if you average the 2 out, 80 hits a minute, 70, 80 hits a minute, about 80% of that, you're getting about 50 of these bolts are activating every minute. And that comes out to about what my testing does. When I tested these, I was using about 5 bolts a minute. With Blightbound crossbows, so 10 bolts times 8, so about 80 activations, with some other additional things hitting the dummy as well. So we'll get to that. But that lines up about right. So if you're using, 50 hits of these bolts, because it's 1/8 chance to use them.
Yeah, let's just use 50 as the round number.
Yeah, you're getting an extra 100% damage, 150% weapon damage every minute, which is going to be, 3 or 4% damage increase.
And for comparison's sake, I've run the numbers before from, upgrading. I think it was from, say tier 90 to tier 92. You're looking in around the same 2% or so damage increase, and you're doing that with these bolts in this case, right?
Yeah, and about the same too if you're upgrading from tier 95 to tier 99 prayers. It's all about 2%. Math is a little funny, and it kind of depends on accuracy, but if you're assuming that you've got pretty high accuracy on everything, then yeah, it's about 2% for all those things. So this is a pretty hefty increase. Now, that's kind of what the math says. Now let's talk about the changes that have been happening lately and things that people have realized with ranged. With ranged, you have a lot of things that can apply, just tons of additional hit splats onto the boss. Now, testing these, it didn't seem to me like they could activate on bleed damage. So they won't activate the bolt if you're hitting something with combustion shot. If you're using, I don't think they'll activate on puncture stacks from the greater sunshine ability from Shattered Worlds.
So it sounds like in that case that you're mainly just talking about primary ability activations then.
Yeah, they do activate on every hit of Ricochet. They do activate on every hit of Rapid Fire and for Snapshot. So your abilities that hit multiple times but aren't a bleed absolutely work for it. Right, so you can get 6 procs of these bolts on a greater Ricochet onto a target.
I'm just laughing because anybody who's used these abilities before and imagines how many times you see those hit splats, just imagine all this extra damage you're bringing in.
Get 12 hit splats onto a target with a single basic ability. It's a little silly. Now, where this gets a little nutty is your on-hit effects that you can apply from that. Right? So things that could be like your dark magic aura, or more importantly, your weapon poison and your Cinderbane gloves. So the thing with this is that Cinderbane gloves have a 1 in 6 chance to activate, including on poison damage hits, so they can activate off of themselves repeatedly. If you hit that 1 in 6, 1 in 6, 1 in 6 repeatedly. So when it comes out to the math, about 20% of the time when you hit a target, your poison will go off. Your weapon poison will go off if you have Cinderbanes and weapon poison. And let's throw, your Quarmin said sticks in there for 10% extra poison damage too, right? Because this does say damage now scales with poison modifiers, so that will impact your bolt damage as well. And think about that and you say, okay, well, let's just hit the boss hit the target a whole bunch of times and just activate this poison damage from Cinderbane gloves and weapon poison just a ton of times. So what some smart person discovered a while back is that you can use the Wyvern Crossbow special attack hits the target every few ticks for just a small poison bleed that ramps up over time. So you've got those hits. You've got greater Ricochet and all these range hits that you're doing, which, quick reminder, you can fire off about 30 to 35 abilities. If you're using channels, about 30 abilities per minute. So, we're getting 30 abilities, and we're trying to get, 300 plus hits. Also, if you have there's one of the new demonic familiars is the Blood Reaver brag from Archaeology. People have definitely been sleeping on this. It's every time you heal, it applies a quarter of that healing as damage to your target in a separate hit splat. If I apply greater Ricochet with poison damage on this, I do 12 hits of damage to the boss. I have Soul Split on, I heal 12 times. My Blood Reaver then applies 12 additional hit splats to that dummy.
And we're saying that the bolts work with the Blood Reaver, right? I
am actually not entirely sure that they do.
Okay.
I know that
would be too good to be true.
Maybe the Blood Reaver can activate your weapon poison. It can activate the gloves. From the testing I did, it seemed like maybe it didn't. And we'll get to that. So I'll get to the numbers. But this is just setting up let's say you're using the Wyvern Crossbow, you're using a Blood Reaver. And those, for the record, those two things have this stuff. It's perked with your meta perks, yada yada. Do allow you to completely away from keyboard Grigorovic. You can stand one step away from his spawn tile with this and a full Revolution plus and eat no food and go forever and get kill times that are under a minute, on about 50 seconds on average. It's really crazy how much damage this thing put out, and primarily because, again, you're hitting the target like 20 plus times, and each one, so you're getting 3 or 4 of your poison damages off, which is about 40 to 45% weapon damage. So, in a minute, if you're hitting the boss 300 plus times, getting 50 plus procs of or activations of your poison, each proc does 40% weapon damage. You're doing 2,000% weapon damage. And a quick reminder, a good rotation is like 6,000 a minute. So you're adding a ton of damage with all of these on hits just stacking and stacking and stacking on each other, which is crazy. Now the Emerald Bolts, once again, it's up every time you hit the target. It's up with a ranged ability, which is I think where this comes in. I don't think that they activate off of like your Blood Reaver hit and stuff.
Right. It explicitly says auto attacks and abilities.
Yeah. You get an additional 0.7 hits per hit per like ability use, right? Or like 8 rounds of 0.7 hits if you're using rapid fire over 6 seconds. Or 7 chances for it with a greater ricochet. So your range rotations, if you count out the bleed things, you're hitting about 50, 60 times. You're activating these 40 times. That's 40 extra hit splats on your monster that can activate your weapon points. So it's a big DPS increase where you can use poison damage. That's kind of where it comes down to. So I did the testing, right? I got out a normal set of just like gear that I would take to like Moscow raids.
Sure.
And I added, because those monsters are immune to poison, I added my Cinderbane gloves to it. I added weapon poison. Vaguely following generals, I used no aura and no familiar for the first couple of these, and just did my normal damage rotation. No crazy switches, all range style. Just using first round, I camped the previous bolts. I just sat on Dragonstone bolts. Did a rotation with no crazy switches, no flanking, none of that. Just a planet feet with a Vinegar Ring, Adrenaline Pot, Blightbone crossbows, and ended up a little 1,041 damage, 1,041 or 1,041,000 damage. There we go. I wrote that funny. Was my total for 5 minutes on this. So 20 or about 208,000 ish was where I was hitting with that.
Okay.
With a pretty modest range rotation. Again, not a DPS expert, right? Your DPS experts are hitting 200,000 without your Bacurino bolts, without these other things. So I'm experienced, but not an expert. And I mean, yeah, even with canceling my channels, those kind of all that, like trying to be a little sweaty, but not using the switches and the other fun stuff that could really bump that up. I switched to the Bacurino bolts, so that was 1,041,000 for 5 minutes. When I switched to the Emeralds from the D-Stones, that went up over 50,000 damage to 1,098,000. So we're up by 57,000 damage just from a bolt switch. Now, given I also was warming up and I'd done a little better with my rotations, it's possible, but that wouldn't increase by 57,000 damage over 5 minutes. So they are definitely better, is what that's seeming to say to me. Again, assuming that I'm using your Arm Incense sticks, your Cinderbanes, and your Weapon Poison for both of those tests.
That's a 5% damage increase.
It is. And again, I think part of that is my rotation. I will absolutely say I think I did a little bit of a cleaner rotation. Had a few extra rounds of practice from the first time doing that. I'll attribute maybe half that change to my rotation. Maybe. But again, I have well over 200 million experience in mostly in bossing situations where I'm using this setup. My action bar has not changed in a long time. Other than, obviously, changing for greater ricochet. So,
sure.
I'm fairly confident that my rotation is fairly consistent. There's probably a little variation there, but these boosts, like these bolts, are definitely 2 to 3% better when you have the poison boost, at least, than the other things. So that's a change. That's a change in what you're going to be using for your meta setup. The biggest thing, though, is again that setup with the Wyvern crossbow and the Blood Reaver. With you're hitting the thing tons and tons of times. And what I'm thinking happened is that I think the bolts do not activate off of the Reaver because it is not ranged ability.
That would make sense.
It would. So here's what I will say is the craziest part about this, which maybe is even a bigger deal than the bolts, is that with that Reaver and Brew setup, I used full Revo++. I was not doing a single input to do damage to this thing. It was actually, my only inputs were to drink 24 doses of Amarak brews over the course of this test, because I had Soul Split on and I was healing from this familiar. So the familiar damage is not tracked in gems, so the familiar damage did not count. But the familiar probably did 25,000 recoil damage, because I healed about 100,000 damage over 5 minutes. Soul splitting off these things, which, if you can do some quick math on how much Soul Split heals, even if the numbers I'm about to say are a little nutty, and my original setup for this is more or less meta setup with like full tier 92s, tier 99 prayer, the whole 9 yards, doing my custom manual DPS rotation. When I changed to the Wyvern Crossbow and added the Reaver and the Zamorak Brew, and again, so the poison is now activating 2 or 3 times as often and doing just, again, that massive damage with just the poison. The damage went up to 1,256,000 damage from 1,041,041. So that's over 200, and it's 215,000 more damage per minute, or per 5 minutes, with no inputs. Full Revolution plus. So that's a thing.
That is amazing.
That is straight up 20% more damage with doing way less work.
And you wouldn't be able to, would you be able to do that extra 20% if you were using your Dragonstone bolts or your Onyxes?
I was with Dragonstone bolts, actually.
Okay.
Use Dragonstone bolts for that.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
We need to just underscore that the Wyvern crossbow dot that we're talking about is separate from the emeralds, for anybody who was wondering about that.
It is an additional poison hit that can activate your Cinder. This is not using the emerald bolts. So that setup is just a little crazy. The thing that it does is it does require you to be healing, right? It does require you to have less than full hit points, and I healed a ton when I was doing this. So you basically need to be either lowering your hit points or at some place like Greg where you take a bunch of damage. Otherwise, it won't work because the Blood Reaver Act won't act. You'll get half as much poison damage, and you'll probably be a little below your typical otherwise defense rotation. Okay, that's it. Did the same exact test. And this one is entirely consistent because I used Revolution, so I know the same ability fired in the same order. And the only thing I was doing was drinking Zamorak Brews. I swapped out my Dragonstone bolts for the new Emerald bolts. With this new setup, my damage increased by from 1256 to 1284. So we're talking about 28,000 more damage over 5 minutes. So that, if we want to say that half my damage different from the previous one, that's exactly the same as from the previous test.
So they're consistent, which is good.
They're really consistent, which says it's the abilities doing the damage to the thing that is where the bolts are activating. It's only on your ranged abilities. But, again, it's about 2 to 3% more damage than Dragonstones. Dragonstones are very consistently 2% more. So this is probably 4.5% damage. These bolts add over your other options at the same price point. 4.5% over the other bolts at the same price point, 4.5% over using like your standard Ascension bolts or Blade bolts. Definitely a shift, right?
Yeah,
this actually puts them better than Onyx bolts.
And let's just take a moment and appreciate here how many emeralds are sitting in people's banks waiting to be crafted on this. And I did a bit of a test on patch day and the day after, checking values on this, and it seems as though people hadn't have caught on. You know, the bolts were up a bit, twice of market, but they're still very affordable compared to everything else.
This, again, it's 1% more damage than your Onyx bolts for a quarter of the price. It's so crazy. That these are actually things I was talking about before. You use your Onyx bolts for the last 40% of a boss's health. If they're not poison immune, I'm using these now. This is what my setup's going to be.
Yeah. Now, I think we have to just have a bigger discussion on this, because is this what they intended for? Because, I mean, the question has been, how do we improve magic? I think everybody accepts that ranged and melee is good where it's at. So the question is, why?
Here's the question about why they think range is too good, or why melee and mage are too bad. I think this is a great change. I actually really like this, because what this does is it says, hey, you mid-level PVMers who've got a little bit of money, maybe you're doing Slayer, maybe you're doing just trying to do a little bit extra damage and be faster on finishing off your boss. This is for you. This is awesome. This is making other bolts a little cheaper. This is for your mid-tier PVMers who aren't doing crazy things, great. For the people that have got a lot of money, that really want to speed kill things that are the high end, that are better than me at damage, that are doing that with this setup, with my starting setup, would do 20% more damage than I did. That's what it comes down to. Those people, they're not going to use these. This isn't useful to them. Their range damage isn't going to go up. They're still going to use their Ruby bolts for most things, their Hydrix bolts for most things, their Onyx bolts occasionally, because they want the healing, because that's important too.
So this is just making ranged combat more accessible to everybody.
This is a niche use for Slayer and stuff, for your more average to average high tier player. I like that. That's saying, here ranged, have some mid tier buff, because all of your stuff is really expensive right now. If you don't have greater ricochet, these are going to do maybe 1,000 damage less a minute, right? It's going to be a little bit. It's not going to be crazy,
right?
And
in my case, I don't invest in greater ricochet because I don't do PVM. But you see how expensive that thing is.
This is saying, we're not adding power creep to range. This does not make the ranged have the ability to do more damage per second at the highest tiers. This is saying, hey, mid-tier PVMers, get a little buff. You people that have just, you've just afforded your first ascension, you're looking to try out some bolts and do a little bit extra damage on your Slayer attacks, you're using your overloads, this is for you. These are your buffs. So that you can use range and feel good about it. Because the reason range is so good right now is because of these crazy, expensive things, right? Like I was saying.
This would be a good thing to use at
crossbows and your greater ricochet.
This would be a good thing to use at the matriarch. The ranged weak matriarch, because it can be poison.
That one actually. Is he immune to poison?
No, it's not according to the wiki.
Oh, see, there we go then. Perfect. Oh, yes. That's the track.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. That's correct. Great for use there. This is very much range without your Eldritch Crossbows, your Serengad bows, and your Essence of Finality buffs. Is a weak combat style on the whole. It actually does slightly less damage. Magic and range are very much on parity. If you're good at rotation in melee can do more, but if you're just camping a single weapon, melee's about the same too. This is probably a good, a reasonable buff to mid-tier, your average high-tier player per ring.
Okay, so the thing we should take away from this then is that the Combat Council knows what they're doing.
Maybe. First somebody said 2 to 4% sounds reasonable. Let's just add that in there. All right. The biggest thing with it is that it compounds with your Cinderbanes and weapon poison. If you're not using those things, these aren't better. These are worse.
Okay. Very key
because
point
they can
there.
apply. Yeah. When you do the math for the damage on these, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the damage you get is from that 1 in 6 chance to activate your Cinderbanes off.
Got it.
Off of that extra hit shit. You're not doing extra damage if you're just camping these without poison. You need to have weapon poison plus, and you need to have some. So, yeah. A bit of niche use, but it is a nice little buff for a few people. Like it.
And at the same time, it just adds more choice to the what's on the combat menu. And, just the way we split this out here at the tail end, it makes absolute sense that, this isn't going to be a huge buff everywhere. But under the right circumstances, you can definitely take advantage of it and capitalize on it if you're at that mid-tier PVM level. And, I think that's what we need when it comes to combat on that. And I really appreciate your analysis on this. I saw you going at it in the Clan Quest Discord, and I thought we have to have this discussion on the show this week. And here we have it. Tanis, do you have any questions?
No, that was a whole lot of math, and I'm curious, and I'm gonna take his word for that.
Yeah. So just summing it up then. Emerald Back Criminal Bolts, Cinder Banes, and the incense sticks that improve poison damage, right? With weapon poison as well involved.
And without the incense sticks, you'll still get a little bit extra damage. Yeah.
And keep in mind that jumping up at the high end, jumping up from tier 90 to tier 92 is about 2% or so. You can get something similar to that with this.
Love that.
There we have it. And that's why I called this the Dark Horse of the Week. That, you know, if you don't read the patch notes, you wouldn't see it's there, but oh boy, is it big under certain circumstances. All right.
For monologuing, let's keep going.
No, that's fine. I get to do that. You get to do that. Tanis gets to do that. That's perfectly fine. We do have to discuss the live stream, but before we do that, I'll just thank our Patreon supporters for this episode because you guys make us do all of these fun things, and we love doing them too. Monthly bit we just had on the RuneScape mobile story from start to finish. Asked some big questions. Why did it take 5 years to come out? What does it mean for the future of the game? Lots of questions and potential jumping off points for the future. You can learn more about that at patreon.com/RSBANDB. But this week I'd like to thank Andrew C., Arvids L., Brock H., CGB900, Christian S., Chunk the Monk, Cook Me Plonks, Danny C., Diana, Drama Free, Dream Delayed, Duramax, Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Kesky, Lucky Ducky, Nate the Great, Nora, Pernasius, Rastafa, Renhawk, Ricky A., Samuel FL, Scott DS, Soup Finder, Stabim, The Bears OP, The Naked Captain, The Lion, Tom V., and Zant. Thank you all of you for your support. It does truly mean the world to us. And if you want to hear that monthly bit, just sign up at patreon.com/RSBNB. For as little as $1 a month, we got that and more, and you get access to the whole back catalog of monthly bits. You get to decide what the next one will be. We kind of preempted that vote this month because of mobile, but I figure it was well worth the discussion, wasn't it, Tanis?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it was a really good bit.
Yeah, one of my favorites. But if you want to go one step further, $3 a month is our VIP tier. You get VIP rank on Discord, mentioned on the podcast at the start of the month, and access to high-quality stereo versions of the show. And for $5 a month, you'll receive a shout-out each and every week on the podcast and gain exclusive access to the outtakes that we use to build the clip show at the end of the year. So thanks so much, everybody, for making this possible. Really wonderful monthly bits that we have been able to do. So with that being said, check us out at patreon.com/RSBNB. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, live stream. Live stream was this week. We had Mod Osborne and Mod Pie on with Mod Hooley hosting. And lots of fun questions that came up. We're going to go through these right now. And, you know, the first one, why is Elder God Wars Dungeon being split apart into multiple fronts and releases? And the answer to this was that they're aiming to hit multiple targets outside of massable multi-way bosses. And in general, if they were to just do that, people would, you know, find the one they like and keep hitting on it, and, you know, it would become the meta, so to speak. Then Mod Osborne spoke and said things that really have a meaning if you read between the words. Now, he said, what if you could do this for thing with the Elder God Wars dungeon where you cater to lots of different types of people? There's probably multiple kinds of content that bosses could be that aren't massable multi-way content. We've gone in that direction. Skilling boss, anyone?
Yes.
Another thing, you know, that we've talked about in terms of skilling bosses, maybe some kind of dungeon survival scenario. Who knows? So, for everybody who's expecting 4 bosses like you had in God Wars 1 and God Wars 2, I think at this point we have to say do not expect that. You're going to have some bosses like that, but probably not all 4 of them. And
okay,
go ahead.
finish it. Oh, yeah, I got opinions on that.
All right. What's your opinion?
Here's hot take. I am a big fan. And here's why. And again, the PBMers out there, I want you to just imagine your favorite God Wars 2 boss. Imagine ignore that they give whether or not they give good loot, right? I absolutely love the Twin Furies. I think I really enjoy that boss fight. I know some people think it gets a little dry. They do very similar mechanics. You can get really good at it. It's really consistent. It's got some mechanics that are easy enough to avoid. It's a great introduction to mechanics for new PBMers. I'm a big fan. I hate that their drop table is about a half to a third as expensive as the rest of the bosses in that dungeon.
Yep.
I will not do them because of it.
Yep.
Because it's just not efficient. And the PBMers out there who definitely maybe don't like the Twin Furies, but imagine your favorite God Wars 2 boss, and just imagine that's what they give you. That's the vision of what this could be, is that they say, hey, we're going to give Vindicta level drop table to the Furies because people like them. They don't do them because they're drop table. Maybe that's what we're getting. We're going to get that drop table to if you love Hellwork, to Hellwork. Right? And so that's what the pinnacle of what this could be, and I like that is the ceiling that we could be getting.
Yes.
Because you always know that's what they're trying to avoid, is they're trying to avoid, this boss is good and people kind of like it, but drops don't give people as much.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Exactly.
Scaling bosses. Fan of scaling boss, I think we've needed a couple for a while. Played the old school leagues over winter. Got to try my hands at Volcano Dungeon, at oh my gosh, that volcano boss that's in Perfidus there. I've tried Temporals. These are, I like that content, right? Of the Wintertop too. Those are fun. They're definitely force killers, but they require a little bit more attention, right? They're definitely not Rex Big Game Hunter level, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity for there, and I am excited to see what they give us for 1, maybe 2 scaling bosses.
Yeah.
Slayer boss? I don't know.
I wasn't looking forward to God Wars Dungeon, but this question and their response to it sold me on it. How do you feel, Tanis?
I'm not convinced. I want to believe in a skilling boss. I do, but I've been hurt before. And I may be hurt again.
I would put money on there being a low tier boss. Your God Wars Dungeon 2-ish level Rex Matrix. I'd put money on there being a high tier boss, like your Nex and your Telos equivalent. I put, at the time of release, right, when they were released, I put some money on a Slayer bot, on a skilling boss, and I think we're going to get 1 or 2 more that are some combination of those things that maybe they'll surprise us. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they give us, hoping that it's enjoyable.
Yeah, and in terms of also releasing it, they say because there will be so many different things to do, not only the bosses, there'd be a massive cognitive load if everything just launched on day one. So we're not talking about a boss. We're also talking about other things to do inside those areas.
Is Sentiston going to be the Prifdinus of combat?
Ooh.
Is it right? Is that what they're setting up for? Because that, do you get a skill with combat and then combat with combat and there's a boss and that could be cool. I'm here for it. I'm in. And high hopes. I don't want to set the bar too high because it's been burned before.
Yeah, that's a very key point.
It has a ceiling where it could be so good.
And, they say the ambition is to do something that's a new and escalating experience and to have the update effectively shift over time in terms of how players perceive it. And they say, that this is what they did with the strange power thing before Dungeoneering came out, and they want the same kind of feeling for the Elder God Wars Dungeon. So
I'm excited, and I know I can be burned, but I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, and I wasn't going in, but I feel better now than I did earlier.
The potential.
Yeah, the potential is there. And then, of course, the question that has been in everyone's mind since City of Sentiston. Will there be more quests after the Elder God Wars Dungeon? And how will the story continue? And the answer to this is that the storyline will likely continue into next year. There's a lot of characters that will be brought in, based on our discussion earlier, perhaps Relomia. There's going to be quest content throughout the remains of the storyline. There will be other non-Elder God Wars quest content, they say. But the storyline is building to something completely new, and the story has actually taken a bit of a left turn from gods and cosmic bodies. And this is their way of getting back to basics. Which, we need drastically.
We do need. Yes, we need.
This is a medieval adventure game that has suddenly become a religious crusade. I don't know.
Very key point there. How far of a left turn do you guys think?
We're off the rails. If somebody from 2006 saw the type of content that we're putting out now, where gods are in the game and we're just chatting with them, oh God, no. They were like, what game is this?
Yeah. We do have a question about this later. Maybe we can pick this thread up then. There was also lots of talk about combat in terms of, what the combat styles should be. In general, melee, burst, ranged should be specialized with bolts, the Eldritch crossbow, rapid fire, greater ricochet, and whatnot, which we just spent a good deal of time talking about. Though when it comes to magic, they can't say what the goal is yet, but they used to reference the Eye of the Pyron is focused on mage currently.
Excellent.
And the goal is to ultimately put a type of meta gameplay on top of your existing rotations, which I think we're starting to see one of those emerge with ranged based on what we just discussed.
Yeah, and I agree. I think they've done a good job with, melee is very much your up close single target burst. Range is your pretty continuous damage. Mage needs to be utility, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
I'm thinking utility or support, honestly.
I think people want to be able to use it for damage too.
Yeah.
It's just if you have the ability to manage a ton of debuffs and buffs at once, you get best in slot damage. Like, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would.
Mage has been too strong for too long. The gear pricing has shifted too much. I think they need to shift it back sooner than.
Yeah, and there's going to be huge opportunities for that with Elder God Wars.
Content.
Then, what was the reason behind nerfing Smoke Cloud? And will other debuffs work this way? And the answer is there's no hard rule that a debuff should affect all combat styles equally, which I think makes sense. They wanted the spell to be team-based. They could have made it a self-buff, but that wouldn't have worked with groups. And requiring, a wand or staff to use it as a weapon type that you fire off wouldn't work with other styles. So you could imagine them kind of leaning more into this kind of thing that we saw with the Sentistan spells plus Smoke Cloud as, we progress through that. And, you can kind of see a bit of a utility buff, debuff meta emerging with magic while still doing some damage, I think. So, let's see. Are the new spells living up to what they've intended? The answer was to that these spells bring some of the meta gameplay in, and they're going to be looking at the cost of the spells and changing autocasts around in terms of how that works, because we all know it's very cumbersome to change from whatever autocast you have active. Mm-hmm. Tank armor will be made more relevant. Now, here's a fun one for you, Tanis. I want you to listen to this next question and answer. Are the Grimoire pages... is their drop rate from what we had last week with the Lost Grove creatures, might that not be low enough? And the answer, or the goal, was rather to bring down the usage cost of using a Grimoire. We talked about that usage cost last week. Very expensive. And the first thing they looked at was increasing the drop rates on Solak. But the amount of pages needed to do this combined with the number of players killing Solak didn't add up. But turns out that Lost Grove creatures are one of the most completed Slayer tasks. I thought that would surprise you.
That shocks me. Wow.
Are good XP and they do have good drops, but they're a lot of effort.
Yeah.
I guess they're good for your people grinding to 120, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not a quick task for... there's...
The drop rates will be slowly modified until they need to be where they're at. And, they admit this is a supply and demand problem because if you increase supply too much, the page price would be destroyed. They're going to be looking at it further, and the changes were meant to be incremental. What does that sound like to you, Tannis?
An incremental change?
Yeah. On the supply side. Again. Your favorite chapter of economics, friend?
That voodoo economics.
Here's another fun one for you. Is a team satisfied with the Divination update? Yes. Apparently the number of people playing Divination has doubled post-launch of that. They're not 100% satisfied because it can still seem claustrophobic, but there's a lot less people now stuck at level 1 Divination.
Yeah, those turned out a lot better than I expected.
Yeah, but we are still charges did go down.
Yeah, I mean they did. I guess we can't have anything nice for too long, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Continuing on, next year's Easter will be more engaging than this year's was. Halloween will reuse last year's Halloween hub. Someone wants more heroes items added into game. They definitely will continue doing that, but no firm plans are announced yet. Now, speaking of what we talked about in the bit for mobile, in terms of the lower Android rating, because Android has a 3.1 versus a 4.2 for the iOS store. There's some compatibility issues on various Android devices, and a lot of the early reviews for the Android version of RuneScape came in from locales where RuneScape is not localized. And these people were expecting localized content. So there's your spike that went down of new people logging in that didn't stick around.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, iPhones are expensive. People in other locales have older Android
Exactly.
phones. Not expensive iPhones.
Exactly. What do you use?
I am an Android user.
Okay.
I have my phone plan and I do upgrade my phone every 2 to 3 years.
Right.
So I do have a fairly modern device.
Fair enough.
But yeah, if I was in the Philippines if I was someplace that was using a phone there's no way that RuneScape gets localized in additional language.
Exactly. And this is what we talked about on the bit, that if you want these players, you got to go out and you got to get them. And you got to have that early experience that will onboard them. They're going to work on that, apparently.
Maybe you could change the tutorial, but the quests, no way.
No
way they're rewriting them all.
No, they're not going to probably do that. Dagannoth pets or Dagannoth King pets are needed, are done. They just need chat head work and dialogue. Player avatar rework. No new major updates yet that they're going to be able to present yet, but work is still ongoing. In relation to death costs, there's going to be an examination of this at the top end. ModPie has done a pitch, but when the death cost system they put in game right now was formed, the death costs we see today were not expected at all.
When you use switches, deaths were expensive at 800,000.
Exactly. And, we did a whole other monthly bit on death costs, and it basically comes down to the fact that death costs harm people who are wanting to get into PVM, but they also harm people who are wanting to better themselves and, work on their telos streaks and whatnot. So they do want to fix that up. Saren spells will be buffed. They're on the list of things to look at because they're underutilized. Will Hydrix tip drops be reworked so they're consistent with ammo usage? The issue is that when Hydrix and Onyx tips were made, they weren't expected to be used so often because they were super expensive. It's now a combination of how powerful they are and how many come into the game. This is actually going to be addressed at the next Combat Council meeting. Which, when you think about it, you were saying that you use Onyx a lot, and Hydrix is used by the very top end, but they really weren't intended for that.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, that was a...
with me, right? Hydrix you only use for part of a rotation. Onyx you use at the end of a kill a lot of the time for rubies. Like, oof. Yeah, they're probably twice as expensive as what I think they should.
Yeah.
Because they activate twice as often, right?
Yeah,
if they were only used half as much, if you just made it so that they only got used on activation 50% of the time, I think we'd be golden.
Yeah, and you know, that's part of the discussion that can be had on this.
Or make them drop from the new bosses.
I don't know how I feel about that. But that's a topic for another day. Will Hydrix, we did that one. What are the mod's feelings on the current level of power creep? And comparatively between years, players are more powerful than they have been. This is a bit of an odd answer. On the whole, it's been a bit of a positive thing for the game.
Well,
the player is powerful, and they should feel empowered. As long as there's still challenges, it's not too bad.
I tend to agree with that.
I do too. I think it's okay to power creep content. Next was not sellable on release. It's sellable now. It's still in a great place.
Yeah, and everybody always dreads the nerf, right? But I think there's many other better ways of balancing without nerfing things, about bringing other things up and occasionally, adjusting HP and armor values if you need to. So there's that.
Quest bosses are a great example of that. The old quest bosses, like in the Dominion Tower, that you can kill in 2-3 hits.
Right. And but at the same time, is that really that big of a problem? I don't know.
Not at all. And it makes the quest seem a little less impactful, but unless you're really in it for the lore,
yeah, it's fine.
They tend to be separate groups.
And, I had this constantly in my head, at the front of my head, when I see that my desert tasks aren't done and that I need to go do Dominion Tower, but I need to remember that we're this overpowered behemoth nowadays. So,
yeah.
Now here's a bit of a sad question. Will there be plans for graphical updates for outdated locations? There's nothing currently on the books for that, but if they do anything to this effect, it will follow the player throughout the early game. And one of the things that Maud Osborne mentioned was actually Varrock.
I was going to say, where do you think is left? Updated Varrock? That was one of the first updates they did, actually, right?
Yeah,
one of the first cities they changed. And so it's starting to look a little old now by comparison.
Yeah, and at this point, that's 15 years ago.
Most of the game, I want to say it.
Yeah,
it looks about on a level otherwise.
Right, and everybody on our spectrum and people who have been around want to see something like Ardoyan updated, or the Yanil area or Karamja. But do you get as much bang for buck out of doing that as you do, a new area like Varrock? And a questioner asked for an expansion to War's Retreat. And, they said this is something we could do in the background, like the Achievement Garden. It's not what the game needs 100%. There are other things that it could do, like onboarding players for bossing and removing the fear of the first boss kills, which I think is something you mentioned that they did on the JVM stream this week with Mod Hooley.
Which I really appreciated watching that. It went right as you'd expect. First time doing Nexus a duo, and they get stuck on Blood Phase, and they get an 8.5-minute kill. They do it again, and they're a bit, they're 4.5. Yes! Like, that went as it really probably should have, people that were vaguely familiar with how the boss worked and hadn't been before. But that kind of stuff, introducing new players to bossing and showing, hey, you can do this. Totally posted on Twitter that he got his first solo kill later that night. I love that. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and it actually made me think I could do that too, honestly. So it's just a question of putting yourself out there.
A few times.
Did it, Shane?
Here we go again.
All right, I'm going to break Janice's heart now.
Oh no.
The next question: are there plans for more 120s? Skill reworks are massive for the game in terms of longevity and also for the work involved. new skills are healthy for the game in terms of new players that it brings in. And that puts 120s in a bit of a wonky place, according to Maud Osborne. There was some uproar with 120 farming and herblore. It's an option for the future, but the team is more interested in new skills and skill reworks.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
we've come a long way from, hearing that a rework like mining and smithing is a no-go to that, skill reworks and new skills are preferred over 120s.
yeah, and I bet it's the exact opposite, probably from, I don't know.
From a certain community?
Yeah.
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 Oh, completionist.
It's interesting, but that's okay. It's not like 120s are taken away. They're just will be what they are for the most part,
Yeah.
which is virtual.
And it raises the question, what is the end game for RuneScape beyond, 99s, if that's the way it's going to be? And we need an answer to that question, I think.
And it's very much a pick your own path right now.
What was that?
I think it's a very much a pick your own path right now. It's you can go full PVM and you can just play OD and Virago and Solak and all those. Get real good at it. You can go MQC. You can hunt your lore and your RNG drops to a point. Right? You can do the completion tree, which is basically kind of the same thing. You can do Slayer. You can do your skilling, and you can go for your Master of All and collect all skilling pets. I think it's a long grind and it's not super rewarding. Definitely see that, but
yeah, and it's not really laid out
for everybody.
Yeah,
no,
like there are
very
things
much
to do. It's just not laid
path.
out in a convenient way to present it. But
Well, and
go ahead.
there's no reason. Well, I was just thinking, like, if they want to focus on reworks or new skills, archaeology came out as a 120.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Totally. Like, obviously, there's some skills. Looking at you, agility, construction, fire making. They could use a little love, right? So maybe they could figure that out. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. The one I want to see the most work done too is woodcutting.
Agreed. Could definitely get a mining and smithing-esque. Crafting too, crafting or fletching is with it.
Yeah.
Seems like very much these have things that you can do to train them, but they're
not
competitive, expensive. It's yeah.
They're not special. They're not special.
Bank standing. Congratulations, you can bank stand.
Yeah.
Spend money.
Any thoughts on special attack rework, specifically the Staff of Sliske? Mod Sponge is looking at reworking that special attack and many others as well. A combat week has been scheduled, but they won't say when. Obviously, I think that's going to be with the release of the first front of the God Wars, Elder God Wars dungeon.
I was going to say with the beach, but probably the same time, right?
Oh, mate, you're right. It could be with the beach. Who
For
knows?
skilling weekends. Let's go.
Yeah, because the beach is coming on Monday.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that.
But maybe later with the beach. Good there.
And in regards to Raksha abilities and dropped abilities in general, they feel those are not where they should be. And it hasn't been forgotten, but they will be tuned. So the question is, do they bring up the other one from Raksha, or do they bring Greater Ricochet down?
Ricochet needs to be brought down. Fixes the issue with on-hits. It fixes the, ranged and melee right now. For expert level damage rotations, 200,000 damage a minute. Mage does 175. Very, very clearly, or 150 to 175.
Yeah, that's a huge gap.
It's 10% less.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Ricochet is too powerful. Melee should have burst damage because you're up front, you're closer. I'm okay with it. It requires a ton of switching back and forth between weapons, using attack and strength abilities. Range should be where mage is. Too strong.
the price speaks for itself. 1.3 billion G price for Greater Ricochet, 160 mil for Greater Chain.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
She said about buffing, though, and buffing being better than nerfing. Maybe Magic just gets brought up to the level of melee and range. Maybe that's it.
Maybe. But at the same time, is it okay having an ability worth 1.6 billion? I don't know.
No.
So, and
Max cash is 2.1 billion. You're getting far too close.
Yeah. And finally, patch notes will explain balancing changes in the future, and they specifically pointed towards the cost change that was made the previous week with the Exsanguinate spell.
Oh, what the rune reductions?
Yeah, our rune economics discussion last week.
Right, okay.
And that's the live stream. We went through that kind of quick, but I think we got the core elements there, what we needed to. As I mentioned, the beach is coming on Monday, July 12th. It'll run until August 8th. So, yeah, I think there's probably a very good chance that it will overlap with that combat week, whenever it is. Key changes this year. Beach ball rolling has been removed. New cosmetics are available for rune coins, and old cosmetics are available in the Oddment shop. And the Dungeoneering Hole will return.
Hey.
Oh.
Love the beach.
You got that 120 yet, Shane?
No, perhaps that's what I should do for the next month.
You better jump in the hole.
In the hole.
Jump in the hole.
I am 115 currently.
Get you some ice cream and jump in the hole.
Levels off that last lore.
Alrighty.
I'm a big fan of the beach. I'm excited to have it back. I
Yeah.
like the previous year's cosmetics. I like the variety of skills. I like the way that you can just spam it, but only to a certain point. Like you can get skilling pets there. Like I think that it is content for everybody, and I am here for it.
It is a very good community event, too, in terms of bringing everyone together.
Yeah, I like that earlier, too. It's more like American style beach time.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, dude, I'm literally going to be on the beach Monday.
Oh,
for vacation.
right. Right, we should.
Comes out.
And figuratively, let's get that
I saw your
out.
text about that. We should talk about what's happening with the show next week, shouldn't we?
Probably.
Yeah, we should.
I'm out of here Saturday morning. Pew.
All right. So that'll be good fun. We'll have more on that on Monday. But we do have a question before we wrap the show up, and it's essay time from Parnassius. So get comfortable, Tanis and Thaxi. I'm going to do my best Parnassius here. As he says, "Good day, all. Parnassius here, with what will probably be a rather lengthy discussion topic. I realize I'm sounding more English than Australian, but anyways, with what has happened with the Battle of Monolith and Zaros entering it and going to the alternate dimension the Majrat call Erebus, do you think he is siphoning power of the Shadow Anima to battle the Elder Gods, or do you think there may be another Elder artifact hidden there?" All right, that's number one. A second point, with both Ma and Jazz not having eggs in this iteration of the universe, do you ultimately think that Saren and Zaros will have to merge to become one to replace Ma, and Jazz will continue on without a rebirth? We have a shard of Ma and a shard of Zaros. Perhaps the body of Saren will eventually absorb the power in these, merging the three entities together and thus becoming the fifth Elder God, creating a new entity representing both light and dark. And that goes back to the Plague series. A third point of discussion about all this is the direction that we're being forced in. Saren has always held the needs of the Elder Gods above all else, and she literally performed genocide on Freniske, wiping out 5 of the 7 races there to keep Ma alive, and was on her way to destroying the Majrat as well, before Zaros stopped her by killing Ma. She has already said that she won't allow the eggs of the Elder Gods to be destroyed, and is there to ensure that doesn't happen, only allowing the siphoning of anima from them so long as they aren't destroyed. Her allegiance has always been to the Elder Gods, and her very nature would be to protect them above all else, and even if she would be devastated by the death of the universe and the people of Gielinor, she would not stop it if it meant the Elder Gods had to die. Finally, if Zaros is in Erebus to siphon enough shadow anima to compete against the Elder Gods, even though he hasn't said it, this world is lost already. Could he perhaps return and merge with Saren to create a new god, gathering all the Elder artifacts still in existence, and send the original Elder Gods into an eternal sleep, whereby they aren't actually killed, but won't ever wake to destroy this version of the universe? Obviously, these are all speculations, and probably not where Jagex is going, but it's fun to try and work out the direction they're taking us. Can't wait to hear your discussion on this. Until next time, may your gains on Gielinor be great. All right, let's move through this one at a time, and let's not turn each one into a specific episode, because I feel like we could do that. Elder artifacts on Erebus, yes or no?
No.
Answer, there's 13 of them. They're artifacts of these Elder Gods who don't have a shadow anima impact on them. I don't think they've been there. I don't think the 12 are located there.
Yeah.
I think he said he's going to siphon power, and I think he just wants...
Yes, and plus, also, Erebus was known as the afterlife for the Majorat, which was a creation on Freneske, which raises the question, why would the Elder Gods have stored an artifact there? I don't think it makes sense.
Agree. I don't think they had anything to do with it. I think it was outside their realm of control.
Yeah. Now, will Saren and Zaros ultimately merge and become one, creating a fifth Elder God? Or, and we'll tie this into the last one as well, could Zaros and Saren merge to create a new god, gathering all these Elder artifacts in existence? So either by gathering all the Elder artifacts or by merging themselves together, absorbing the power in the shards.
I don't think so. And here's why. I think the artifacts are somewhat tied to other Elder Gods for the most part. The other Elder artifacts, for the most part, do not seem to have intrinsic power. So if we're looking at the measure, the crown, the horn seems to potentially, but like the mirror doesn't. Right? Most of them don't seem to have the ability to add power to a being. So I don't think that they are like going to form Exodia with these things. With the shards, I mean, again, potentially, if you've got a little bit of Shadow in them, a little bit of Ma, a little bit of Zaros, they could find a way to fudge it into the lore. I don't think they would, because Saren and Zaros are important to people that are playing the game and important to the game lore. I don't think that they would merge them into a singular being.
And just get rid of them, right?
I think lore-wise that wouldn't make sense. Also, a really big preface to this, I absolutely really do love Saren, just as a god, and have been following that since she had a 2-paragraph page on the old wiki.
Right.
I have the Saren symbol tattooed on the back of my shoulder. Like, I do not want this to happen. Maybe that clouds my judgment here.
Oh, wow, that's quite the dedication.
Light and help and human kindness, I'm for it. The medicine. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's, and I'm on the record as saying this, I think there's a higher chance of Saren shattering herself and Zaros ending up dead somehow at the end of this, rather than them combining and becoming one of them, so to speak. And, I don't even think the Elder Gods would be on the side of Zaros becoming an Elder God or them becoming a combined Elder God. I don't think the Elder Gods would be pleased with that.
I think Zaros wants that power, and I think Saren doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think Zaros will approach that and try to. I don't know how it'll end, though.
Exactly. And, I think if he tried that, the Elder Gods would be more concerned and angry at him. Well, probably not more angry, but they'd definitely be as angry with him as they are with us for what we've been up to.
Great.
So, and in terms of Saren and the Elder Gods and Ma, do we think that, we answered this in the City of Santistan episode, but I guess we'll get your thoughts, Thaxi, on this. Is Saren going to become a problem because she won't let the eggs be destroyed?
Oh. I want them to work this out in a way that she doesn't. I am not comfortable saying that I think she won't. I think that there's a pretty good chance that something bad is going to happen. Honestly, and I've said this before too, this is me fan theorying, and I'll be very quick. I believe the Elder God eggs will hatch, and they will be in some way the bosses for the Elder God Wars 2.
Interesting.
And I know, or Elder God. I think that fighting like Jess is just something that's not reasonable. Maybe she's the big boss. Maybe she's the next end, the Telos of the situation, because she doesn't have to pour her essence into. I would be unsurprised if the new Elder Gods were the things that we were fighting and trying to contain, i.e., like your Wintertod, like your like the skilling bosses, right? That's their whole deal, is you're going to skill to keep this thing contained. I'd be unsurprised to see that. I think the eggs are going to hatch, and Saren, that's, I think, how they're going to get around Saren not letting anything happen to them, because I think they're going to be our bosses.
Okay, that's actually a pretty good theory. We didn't go that way on the City of Santistan episode, but that's a good alternate way.
I think they're hatching. I am very confident they're going to hatch. I think we're not going to store them away. I think they need to do something with those eggs. I think they're going to hatch. We're going to kill them repeatedly as possible.
All right, and yeah, and you know, we could talk for hours on this, but I think we've answered the core of these questions here, and perhaps this is something we need to come back to and have a Lord Diggers episode on at some point before the Elder God Wars dungeon drops, maybe. So, and just a couple of quick-fire ones from Chodo here. Do you think Slisuke will reappear as Jazz's champion in Elder God Wars?
I expect us to fight Jazz. Total hot take, total. I think Slisuke will come out and at the last minute help us contain one of them, maybe. I think we're going to send somebody to the Shadow Realm, or he's going to pull Zaros out of the Shadow Realm. I think Shadow Magic is connected to Erebus. Erebus is the Shadow Realm. I think Slisuke knows a ton about it and is going to come in.
Right, because wasn't he was the agent and was initially put up to the task of killing Guthix by the Elder God, right?
And again, even when he served Zaros, he was the shadow guy. I mean, he's always been the agent to like, oh hey, I know about things. I know more than you think I do. I'm still here. He's in Erebus right now. Maybe he's going to catch up with Zaros and they're going to come back. I don't know, man, but I think he's going to be on our side. I think he will reappear.
All right,
be pivotal in the end. Surprisingly, trickster wise.
Janice, you have any thoughts on that?
And I don't know. I'm not a big Slisuke fan. I kind of hope it's.
You don't like the court jester?
No, I don't know. I don't. I feel like there's no purpose. That's one of the reasons that I didn't like the way Zamorak was kind of framed. Like, I don't like chaos just for chaos's sake.
Right.
Yeah.
He's definitely been turned into the court jester. I think that's a great way to put it. He's definitely been like, we've had some really heavy lore-based quests that are just story, but we need that RuneScape comedy. Hey, Slisuke, what you doing? That's what he's become.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily out of character, but like I'm hearing what Tanis is saying. Like, he's definitely like not necessary. It's just like something else that's like, hey, let's throw a wrench in the works of some comedy.
Well, yeah, he's the closest analogy Star Trek related is Q. I don't know how you feel about Q, Tanis.
Conflicted. Bitch, yes.
It's like Slisuke.
Uh-huh.
All right, and finally, why is Robin skyrocketing? And I thought he was talking about Robin Hood with this, but this is the little Robin pet that sits on your finger from Christmas a couple years back, and I guess rarity, but it's kind of
Somebody is merching them.
It's kind of shot up over like it's shot up from 3 million to 9 million at this time.
Somebody has a stack of 50,000 of them, and is just hardcore merching. Or, however many.
Yeah.
Because they're not coming into the game anymore. That's my expectation.
Yeah, and at the start, and obviously that's what it is, because it's going up in steps. Start of the year, 2.4, currently 9.1. But if you go back 1 year, 687K.
I bought one last year for about that. They're expensive now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess this is a good reason to be a hoarder.
I mean, I think somebody's intentionally doing it so that they can sell them later to increase.
Yeah, and
somebody is just saying,
and that's the
birds.
That's the number one way of merching in RS is just completely siphon the market of everything when it appears at the price that you want, and then it'll go up over time. I know people who've done that and have billions of specific items.
He says cabbages.
Yeah, yeah. Alrighty, thank you for your questions, everyone. If you want to send them in, you can email us, questions@rsbnb.com, or leave them in our new questions forum at update.rsbnb.com/ask. All right, Tanis, you have a pick of the week for us.
I have a pick of the week. So I have been working my way through what is considered canon in the Star Wars universe, and recently finished a book that is about the legends of Luke Skywalker. It's Star Wars Road to the Last Jedi, I believe. But what's really cool is it's just a collection of kind of stories that is being told by this group of kids, essentially on a ship. And it reminds us of, that hero character that kind of the franchise was built around. Before we had to think about complicated things, and there were sequel trilogies. And
before our friend J.J. Abrams came in, right?
J.J. is fine. It was Johnson that really messed up the legacy. And so that's what I liked about this book. It just kind of brought that magic back a little bit. One of the best scenes probably of any TV series, lately was when, Luke appeared in the season finale of The Mandalorian. That was I got a really big pop. And these stories kind of gave you the same kind of feeling. So that's my pick of the week. It's Journey to the Last Jedi, Legends of Luke Skywalker.
All right, sounds good. You can find that on an Amazon hardcover, of course, Audible, or paperback, or even Kindle, depending on how you read things in this day and age. My pick of the week is a comic strip, and it is the Dilbert comic strip by Scott Adams. And, should you ever see something in a corporate world, there's a good chance it has been illustrated in Dilbert. And one of my favorite ones that happened recently was the whole debacle over when CEOs try and insert their fingers into things that they should not, as recently happened with the Coca-Cola company, just to name a few of them. But anything that comes up, and it's very timely too. There's things about blockchain and crypto built into this as well, and anything that should come up, or anything that is in, I guess you could say, popular culture in this day and age and can come up in this kind of setting, does have a comic associated with it. And it's something that, hey, if you see this kind of thing happening in the real world, there's a good chance that it's going to make its way into one of these comics. And they're just really fun to look at from time to time. You can, of course, find those at dilbert.com. Now, this one's been on the list for a while, and I thought now would be a good time to share this one. So I enjoy it. But that's my pick of the week. Let's move on to achievements. So I'll start us off. We have Almost Evil 2 with 99 Smithing on July 7th. Eric's got 99 Divination. D3X 1AN got 99 Cooking on the 7th. Alio Sith with 99 Defense on the 6th, as well as Prideus with 99 Constitution. Shamrock Soup got 99 Ranged, and WM Penguin got 99 Archaeology and 99 Invention, while Zerdones got 99 agility on July 6th.
Rex got 120 agility. Questar Shit got 120 archaeology. Rex got 99 farming. G Senpai got 99 fishing. Kinky Sliske 99 woodcutting. Ooh yeah. Newbie to Newbie got 99 farming. Prodigal Gaz got 120 magic. Sex Wheeler got 99 dungeoneering.
Nicely done.
And then we have Thieves with 200 mil Constitution on July 3rd. And D3X 1 a.m. with 99 fishing on the 2nd. Obi Danubi with 99 dungeoneering on the 2nd. We have Ryora with 99 farming on July 2nd. Queen Adina with 99 firemaking on the 1st. And 99 construction on the 1st. Way to go, guys.
Well done. Well done. And that pretty much wraps this episode. But what have you been up to on RS, Stannis?
I am working on task 43. We are almost there.
Is this the furthest you've gone?
No. I've went through. I think I went through 2.
Okay, fair enough.
So, and I have 5 skips if anything gets too hairy at the end here.
You enjoying it?
Yeah, I really have. I really have, and I needed the break. Although,
yeah,
what's been nice was I've liked the kind of rotation of the gathering skills, like doing some fishing, doing some mining, doing some archaeology. That's been fun.
Yeah, I agree totally on that. I've been doing that as well. I finished my yak track. Completed task 50, finished that one off by getting the 3rd piece out of the last potion recipe for Orthan. And for the task 2 before that, 48, it was either crafting or marks of war. So I went to Vindicta for 2 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah,
nice.
and I got a Crest of Zaros for 26 mil in my first hour.
That's damn Shane.
Oh,
Shane's luck. Shane's luck.
And of course, because of the cap, that's not enough. I finished off with this Reaper task that's been on my Reaper list for who knows how long. It was a General Grerador task. So, who says I don't PVM, right?
Yeah.
But aside from that, just, really, really enjoying Yak Track for everything that I've been able to extract from this one. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, honestly. It's a bit of a question. But how about you, Thaxi?
I have not had a ton of time to play right now. When I can play, when I have the time for it, I'm sitting in the RuneSpan, grinding out the rune crafting pet, working on getting those last 3. Most of these days, I log in for some dailies, ports, and to do my mouse cub raids, which I'll throw a quick plug in. If anybody is looking to learn those, every 2 weeks, the Raid FC staff, we run a learner event. You can show up on Saturday afternoon at the raid entrance. You'll see it on the in-game calendar. It's your 80 or 90 gear-ish, and we'll get you through with a kill.
Nice.
Onto those bosses for Reaper or just for learning. So no need to worry about finding a team or paying too low level. We'll get you through it. So throwing that out there too.
Wonderful.
Actually, this Saturday, depending on when this comes up.
Yeah, this launches on Friday the 9th.
Perfect. So the day after, the next day, you show up. Look for
for anybody listening on Friday. Some people listen in the next week, but you said every 2 weeks, right?
Every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Every 2 weeks. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. I appreciate that. I enjoy aspects of the community making combat easier. Obviously parts of the community can be a little bit derogatory when it comes to that. So any effort to lighten the load on that is wonderful. So.
Right.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Update. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thaxi, hopefully you enjoyed yourself first time on the show, and wonderful analysis on the Emerald Bolts.
Thank you for having me and for putting up with my monologuing.
That's allowed. That's allowed on the show. And, of course, Tanis, you won't be back next week, so we'll see you in 2 weeks, right?
Yep, 2 weeks, and I will be back tan and refreshed.
All right, sounds like a deal. So with that being said, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, check it out on Apple Podcasts, Google, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Stitcher, practically anything, even YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANDB. I'll be back with the mystery co-host next week after I figure that out. So see you next week, everyone. Take care.
See ya.